Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. Well,
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Daily Roundup on this, a Tuesday, March 14th, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. Folks, do you know that yesterday was Smart and Sexy Day? And I was going to wish my co-host a happy Smart and Sexy Day, and then I realized I'd be in violation of the HR policies here at Rebel News. She is the she-devil with a spatula. She is the Khaleesi of Coburg, Ontario. She is Tamara Ugolini. How you doing there, Tamara?
Well, I'm always so much better after your rambunctious introductions. I could never compete with that, David. Thank you. Yeah, we don't want to counteract or do anything in regards to the HR policies, but we can allude to them, right? So I appreciate that. Thank you. And how you doing over there in Toronto?
Well, you know, I'll tell you, Tamara, like I said, I don't want to wish anyone in this day and age a happy, smart and sexy day. But I'll tell you this, I woke up on Monday morning, and that's when I learned on the radio that it was Smart and Sexy Day. So have some pity for me, because I wake up on a frosty Monday morning and I'm already 0 for 2.
Oh, David. What about Lady Menzies? I'm sure she had a fun time yesterday with you around.
Well, Tamara, we have a real big docket of things to get
Yes.
to. By the way, I apologize to our viewers for yesterday because technical difficulties. Somehow we had some gremlins gum up the works. We couldn't do our daily live stream, and it wasn't as though we slept in. I know that's the accusation. What with daylight savings time, we forgot to put the clock forward.
Terrible.
But Sheila out
Worst
in
time of the year.
Alberta and me here at Rebel News headquarters, we're ready to go. So I apologize for anyone who was expecting a show yesterday, and hopefully this will be a glitch-free broadcast. So Tamara, tell the folks at home what it is we're attempting to do here in the first place.
Yes, so welcome to our daily roundup. And as David mentioned, it is we're honoring Smart and Sexy Day here in lieu of the cancellation of the live stream yesterday. So if you're just joining us, you can find us on Rumble, Getter, Odyssey, YouTube, and Twitter. And unfortunately, because of the censorious thugs in Silicon Valley, we have been demonetized and we're kind of teetering on full deplatforming really from YouTube. So on those other platforms, which I would urge you to head on over to and join us there anyway, which are Rumble, Odyssey, and then of course Getter and Twitter. But on Rumble and Odyssey, you can engage with us directly. And so it's a great way for us to get our viewer feedback and provide comments on some things that might be important to you. So on Rumble and Odyssey, you can give us what is called a hyper chat or a super chat, and through a small monetary donation, which helps to fund and keep our independent journalism afloat, you can also get your comment read on screen by us during the live stream. And sometimes we try to wait until the very end to read through them, but if there's something that is, really pertinent to the topic that we are discussing at the time, then we'll try to touch on it in the heat of the moment, I guess. So as David already mentioned, we have a full itinerary here today to discuss, and in lieu of, again, yesterday's internet woes. So the first thing, I guess we'll start it off on on a Trudeau foot. We have a video to share with you where, as many of you may already know, amid allegations of Chinese interference into our democratic process, and namely lobbying and pandering in the Liberal Party of Canada, and also, I guess, the Conservative Party, as well as we've seen in recent days, a Conservative member on the provincial level in the Progressive Conservative Caucus has resigned, but not on the Liberal federal level. The allegation against Liberal cabinet member Han Dong. He remains as a seated in caucus. And so Trudeau is appointing a special rapporteur, of course, right? Because we need an independent analysis just as much as the Public Order Emergency Commission, the Trucker Commission inquiry was, independent. So Trudeau has taken it upon himself to appoint his own rapporteur of his choosing to essentially investigate himself. And here he is really stressing the urgency to do so. Have a look.
Prime Minister, can you give us an update on when a decision will be made regarding the rapporteur?
We know how important it is for Canadians to have confidence in our system and to have the right independent expert reassuring of that, because it's not about what one political party says or another. It's about making sure that experts are stepping up to reinforce the integrity of our democratic processes. We are working to appoint that special rapporteur, that special independent expert in the coming days or week. We're working extremely quickly on that.
Gosh, are you like me, David, where the word expert now just has no merit any longer?
Well, I just want to know what a special rapporteur is, not just a garden variety rapporteur, but a special one. Is there such a thing as an extra special rapporteur? It sounds like an all-star member of Toronto's pro basketball franchise, for that matter. But, Tamara, isn't it amazing? I'm sure Justin Trudeau was hoping when these Chinese interference allegations were breaking, that this would just go through the 24-hour or the 48-hour news cycle. Well, no, we're going into week 3, thankfully, of this being a major issue, as it should be. And isn't it incredible that when Trudeau couldn't get the media to go away on this issue, because remember, his stand pat response going back 2.5 weeks ago, Tamara, was, oh, well, you're talking about Han Dong, an Asian Canadian, therefore to, say anything negative about him, you are a racist. Yeah, that's right, blackface. We're the racists out there. I mean, I'm getting sick and tired, Tamara, of this government playing the racist card, the hate card, the anti-Asian Canadian card, especially coming from a guy that's donned blackface makeup so many times, not even he knows about it. But clearly it didn't work. In fact, it backfired. He got mocked, even by those, thankfully, in the mainstream media. By the way, we're running a clip of Trudeau doing his shtick. You know what's even worse, Tamara? I don't mean to go off on a tangerine here, but every time he dons blackface, you notice he sticks his tongue out? Is this how our Prime Minister perceives black people? They're like dogs, they're panting, their tongue is sticking out. I mean, I think that's probably just as offensive as putting the blackface on. So I don't even know what the hell is in his mind in the first place. But yeah, this special rapporteur, he's going to look into things. I wonder who that special rapporteur will be. I wonder if it will be a partisan person. And like the Emergencies Act inquiry, let's face it, it was disappointing. Was it surprising? Not a chance. We all followed it. We could see that conclusion coming a mile away. So I don't think this is enough. What I'd like to see is, hello, Royal Canadian Mounted Henchmen. How about, in addition to your investigation of CSIS to see who the whistleblower is, in fact, I wouldn't mind if they dropped that case like a hot potato. Why don't you look at criminal charges, a criminal investigation about this Chinese interference? And one last point on this, I want to get your response, Tamara. Yesterday, Maurizio and I went up to Han Dong's constituency office in Don Valley North, that's the riding, because when we were there last Monday, they locked the door and everybody ran away because there was a protest and there was some media, independent media there. So we went back there and we didn't get much, just a junior staffer who, played the Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing, I saw nothing card. But it was kind of incredible. Less than 4 football fields away, also the provincial riding of Don Valley North, that's Vincent Kay, the provincial MPP that was, he's now out of caucus as of Friday night. He's been accused of being aided by Chinese interference and accepting money. Now, his lawyer has denied all these allegations and says they are, downright defamatory. So we should point out these are just allegations. Nothing has been proven in court. But I think at least provincially, the Ford PCs are doing the right thing, Tamara. Mm-hmm. He's out of caucus. He's sitting as an independent. If he can clear his name, he'll come back in. Why don't we get the same treatment with Han Dong?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's a great point. And stay tuned for David's full report, because I believe you mentioned that specifically. And again, all of this and the way Trudeau's reacting and acting further points to the hypocrisy of the bureaucracy, which I constantly say, I have that coin. That's TM, Tamara Ugolini, by the way. But I think that the riding of Don Valley North has been specifically targeted by Beijing and the Chinese Communist Party, and this was part of a news article that came out yesterday. It's from the Business Intelligence for BC website, and the article is called "Cash Flew from West Coast Donors to Trudeau's Montreal Riding." So his local re-election fund, his Montreal Riding Association, in 2015 and 2016. And there is a lot here in this article. I don't know if we can pull it up on screen. It was one of the links that we were originally going to talk about, and it just didn't quite make it into the headline for the daily live stream today. But basically, it's saying that the person in Han Dong's seat was previously Liberal Jen Tang. And I don't know, this is about halfway down the article. It says, in June 2016, there was a donation gave to Liberal Jen Tang, and he is who superseded Han Dong in that riding. And he, like I mentioned, there's a lot here in this article, but basically he has direct ties and direct funding given to him by the executive chair of the Canadian Alliance of Chinese Associations, which is an arm of the Chinese Communist Party's United Front program, which aims to influence foreign politicians to adopt positions favorable to the Chinese government. And then so when this particular person, and I don't have all the background on them, but Jen Tang was replaced by Han Dong. And that's when CSIS was sounding the alarms to the Trudeau government, saying, hey, there's some clear monetary cash flow coming pretty much directly from the Chinese Communist Party's United Front program itself to these members of your party. And we think that you should, pay attention to this and not allow them to run. And so for whatever reason, the Don Valley North riding seems to be a target here specifically from Beijing with this interference. And it also makes me question too, if we have a clear paper trail here, if we know that this is happening and we can trace this back to where the cash switched hands, and I'm sure there's a ton of it that obviously could never be tracked or traced, but why aren't we freezing their bank accounts? This is foreign interference. Yeah. Didn't we freeze the bank accounts of Canadians for sending $50, $100 donations to a grassroots protest against this same government's COVID-related response, which is very similar to the way that China responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, why don't we freeze their bank accounts while we are able to investigate and figure this out? I don't hear any talks about any of that happening. But when it's grassroots Canadians with $50, $100 donating to a protest for a cause that they support to uphold, bodily autonomy and freedom of movement, our constitutional rights and freedoms, essentially, to put it broadly, Well, they get their bank accounts frozen for months on end and completely decimated. And meanwhile, we have actual documented foreign interference by the tens of thousands, and no one's bank accounts being frozen to be investigated.
Well, Tamara Ugolini, come on, let's be fair. I mean, there's a lot of baggage, obviously, in Han Dong's closet, but he hasn't, set up bouncy castles in Don Valley North. He hasn't set up a hot tub, or he hasn't done a pork roast. That's what gets blackface to freeze your bank accounts, not that. But the other thing, in addition to everything you mentioned about the money and the interference, is that it's uncanny, the coincidence, I think, of how Han Dong certainly looks like a little Beijing puppet, because on two separate occasions, it was a Liberal-sponsored motion, Tamara, to condemn the government of China for its treatment of the Uyghur Muslims, basically a genocide for any other name. He, at the very last minute, left the floor. He did not vote one way or the other. I think that's kind of uncanny, given that it was his own party introducing this, but he's obviously more loyal, I think, to the Mandarins abroad than he is to the Prime Minister. But before we get more into that, why don't we play another video of Trudeau basically saying there is no question that there was attempted interference from Beijing. Oh my goodness, how his tune has changed in the space of just less than 3 weeks. So why don't we roll that video and try to make sense of it all?
That's why, following the 2015 election, we worked to counter election interference by building a number of different processes and bodies around national oversight that would be able to counter and figure out ways to continue to protect our democracy. So there is no question that, yes, there was attempted interference from Beijing into our electoral processes, but it's also because of those processes and verification methods we put into place, confidence that they were not successful in affecting the outcome of those elections. And that's something Canadians need to be reassured about. This is a serious issue that we have always taken seriously, and therefore we're making sure that Canadians will continue to have confidence by appointing an independent expert to look at the entire landscape around national security and election interference from Beijing, but other places as well, and put in place the oversight, the processes, the steps necessary to maintain Canadians' confidence in our democracy and in everything that our national security officials and experts are doing every day to keep Canadians safe. We will continue to take this with the seriousness with which it requires. It's not a partisan issue. It's an issue on which we all need to work together and listen to independent experts, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah, independent experts.
Yeah, right. And by that, blackface means he's going to get to the bottom of this, and that is who the whistleblower at CSIS is, as opposed to the Chinese interference. And why would the Prime Minister, Tamara, be concerned? I mean, you look at the three-prong objective, allegedly, of the government of China, and it was this. They backed at least 11 Liberal MPs to get elected, according to the whistleblower, and apparently they all did. 9 Conservative MPs who had less than favorable views of the Beijing regime, they did not get elected. Again, that's another plus for Blackface and company. And then, of course, they wanted the Liberals to retain a minority government. And that's the really fascinating thing, I find, Tamara, and I've said this on previous shows. Yeah, Blackface is our boy, all right, but we want him on a short leash. We don't want to give him an all-out majority or supermajority. Just in case maybe, Blackface walks off the reservation, we'll do some other tinkering to turn that tide around. it's just amazing. So like I said, if I'm Justin Trudeau, I'm on Team Beijing, especially since we know from 10 years ago this year, Tamara, he professed in public his admiration for the basic dictatorship of China when it came to, getting things done. Getting things done, what do you mean by that? Oh, maybe like fixing an election or at least interfering to try and fix it? Give me a break.
And that's another point that is interesting to make here, going back to this Business Intelligence for BC article, is they note here how much certain Conservative Party members were also given by this scheme from Beijing, or with direct ties to Beijing and the Chinese Communist Party. And I also think that, when Trudeau says, oh, we have to ensure that, Canadians have confidence in our democracy. Well, nothing would make me feel more confident in our democracy than Justin Trudeau stepping down, although I'm not a fan of Chrystia Freeland, and I don't think that would be a suitable replacement. But Justin Trudeau stepping down or somehow dissolving this coalition he has with these two fringe parties between the Liberal Party and the NDP with Jagmeet Singh, dissolve this coalition that you have, because that undermines our democracy. Neither of these parties were elected as a majority government, but they have come together to form a coalition to essentially stronghold parliament as a majority government. And so both of these parties are single-handedly together undermining our democracy. And now we have the added element of foreign interference into these two fringe minority parties, as further evidenced by some of the stipulations written about in this particular article. The whole thing is an assault to democracy. And so by Justin Trudeau appointing a special rapporteur and his own self-proclaimed expert to look into this, which is essentially going to give us more bureaucrats, right? They're going to be forming more groups to keep an eye on things. So we're essentially just further bloating this bureaucracy with this whole investigation, as we did with the Public Order Emergency Commission. I mean, how much taxpayer dollars went into that? So, I guess in response to the concerns of foreign interference, we just get to hire more bureaucrats and pay more taxpayer dollars to a government that is supposed to investigate itself and find itself to have been wrong. This is not democracy. And Justin Trudeau is out to lunch if he thinks that this somehow instills confidence in our democracy after nearly 7 years of him undermining it.
Well, Tamara, I think it goes beyond undermining democracy. It's a direct attack on our national sovereignty. You have to have fair elections, fair and square. Otherwise, you're just some banana republic with goons stuffing the ballot boxes. As I've said before, we don't grow bananas here. Call us a maple syrup republic, okay? And talk about being 0 for 2. If our elections are up for grabs for foreign interference, such as what's happening with Beijing, look at another important tenet of national sovereignty, and that is border control. And we have a porous border. We have thousands of people just walking in on Roxham Road alone. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police turned into the Royal Canadian Mounted Bellhops and carried the luggage in. And now it's a cascading problem. Thousands and thousands of these illegal aliens are here. They are putting a strain on cities and towns that have homeless shelters because they're being bussed out everywhere. We went earlier this month to Niagara Falls and saw the situation there, where there's something like more than 2,000 rooms of a 16,000 room inventory, and tourism season is around the corner, and they're still being bussed into Niagara Falls. So I'm getting off on a tangerine here again, but the point is, border security, don't have it. And it looks like when it comes to electoral security, don't have that either. And I think in each case, Tamara, you got to say, what's in it for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals? Well, if the goal of Beijing was to alter the election in the Liberals' favor, why would you want to stop that? And secondly, could the unspoken strategy of the lacks of border security that we have, is it all about changing the demographics? That the quid pro quo is to everybody that got into this country illegally, say, you know what, just show up every 4 years and vote for Team Red and Bob's your uncle. So basically, I think the Liberal Party of Canada is the main beneficiary of these two tenets going down the toilet.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And on the topic of compromising our national sovereignty, we see here in an article published this morning by CTV News, Canada is on the sidelines as the United States, Britain, and Australia move ahead on a new security deal. And so none of these countries are taking Ottawa seriously because, I assume, of the documented and now known interference of our democratic process. Justin Trudeau himself has confirmed that it can no longer be alleged that there was foreign interference. There was. It's just whether or not it had any effect on the election, which, we can draw some conclusions there based on the unethical way that this cabinet continually conducts itself. But sorry, just getting back to the article there, it reads, Canada's omission from a military pact involving 3 of its closest allies is symptomatic of a larger problem in how this country is perceived by its friends. Experts, quote unquote, are warning as the US, Britain, and Australia move ahead on their deal. And there you have it. We are not being taken seriously on the world stage, arguably have not for a long time under Blackface McRoper, as we've previously coined him, but now is further compounded by this interference and an inability by this government to crack down and take a hard stance on condemning the acts of the Chinese Communist Party. Again, nothing against Chinese people, the culture, nothing like that. This is a dictatorship, an authoritarian state that should be condemned for its actions, and it should be taken very seriously by a democratic nation whose leader says that they uphold democracy and are squandering billions of dollars to Ukraine to apparently uphold their democracy as well. This is a very perverted idea of what a democracy is, and now we're being ousted from military security deals because of it, in my opinion.
I think you're right. And Tamara, a big part of this strategic alliance with the UK, the US, and Australia, it's about getting new submarines that are equipped with nuclear missiles to address the growing threat of China. And China is furious about this alliance. So you have to ask yourself, why isn't the Canadian government champing at the bit saying, hey, we want to be part of this alliance too? Well, because Blackface has that basic admiration for China. China is an ally for the Liberal Party of Canada. That's why they don't, Trudeau doesn't mind being snubbed by this alliance, because behind the scenes, Beijing is furious about this, and Justin Trudeau doesn't want to do anything to incur the wrath of the Communist Party of China. What a disgrace.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely a disgrace. And just going back to the Ukraine stuff as well, we have a clip here of our Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, saying that, well, China has a specific role to play, apparently, in the stabilization of Europe. Let's have a look at that one.
We call on China to make sure that President Xi has a conversation with President Zelensky. President Zelensky and President Xi have not had a phone call since February 24th of 2022. We deplore that. We think China can and must play a role in obviously not supporting Russia, but more than that, in helping to solve this war. And that's exactly what I mentioned to my Chinese counterpart also when I met him yesterday, China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It has a duty to defend the UN Charter, and it has also a specific role to play in this context to bring much more stability to the European region.
Well, Tamara, call me crazy, but I think China is more on Team Russia than Team Ukraine. What is Minister Jolie talking about?
You know, I don't even know if she knows what she's talking about. She can't even say dates correctly. I think she's just reading off of a teleprompter and not having any real grasp on what it is she's saying. This is insane. These are very crucial unfolding of events and very strong power states that we're discussing. And they don't even know what they're talking about, it seems. I mean, oh, we're in trouble.
Oh, indeed. Well, you know what? Let's get to a response on the Ukraine file by Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader. But before we do, we have to take a time out for an ad break. So we'll catch you folks on the other side of this ad. Thank you.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live stream, and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this incredible sweatshirt that I'm wearing, but also all the other great merchandise that we have available at rebelnewsstore.com. We're adding new stuff all the time, so be sure to keep checking. Even if you shop today, there might be something new tomorrow. And if you are shopping, be sure to use the coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
Now, I want to warn our viewers, oh, sorry, David, that this next clip of the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, is very disappointing, in my opinion. Do you want to share some thoughts before we get into it?
You know what? I'm lukewarm on it. I share your disappointment on one factor, but one of the points he makes is, where is the money going to? You could call this almost like what's happening in healthcare at the provincial level. Is the money going into hospitals and beds and doctors and nurses, or is it going into this bureaucracy that just keeps growing and growing? If you look at, say, the Ontario healthcare system and the German healthcare system, I think the difference in government bureaucrats is something like 11 to 1. They're not helping anyone in terms of rendering healthcare. They're spending all day long sending memos to one another. That's basically their job. But this is not a healthcare issue. This is what we're doing in Ukraine. But same kind of deal. Is this all about enriching bureaucrats as opposed to, coming up with frontline military equipment? Let's see what Mr. Poilievre has to say.
Is Canada spending too much on Ukraine right now, in your opinion?
I think we need to get results for our money, and we support an end to Russia's illegal and unjustified invasion. What the problem with this government is it's not that they don't spend enough, it's that they don't achieve enough results for the spending they do. They spend too much on back office bureaucracy and not enough on frontline military equipment.
Can you clarify on the Inflation Reduction Act?
This gentleman here, and then
you're saying spend a dollar, cut a dollar for every dollar spent.
Yeah.
What would you cut? You've alluded to some things, but where would the cuts come from?
Well, I would defund the CBC. I would get rid of a lot of the spending on the high-priced consultants. We're now spending $22 billion on high-priced consultants. He's going to be spending $5 billion going after people who are licensed, registered rifle owners, hunters, going into knocking on their doors and trying to confiscate property that they legally acquired. That money should go into frontline border services to protect against the smuggling, which is actually causing the violent crime.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Tamara. Whenever this election is, whether it's this year, next year, or 2025, let's hope Pierre Poilievre doesn't turn into Aaron O'Toole 2.0 and backtrack on these promises. I want to see the CBC defunded. The very idea they're getting, it's almost, $1.5 billion a year? By the way, where's the money going? It's astonishing to me. And also to back off on hounding legal gun owners. while at the same time we're reducing bail requirements for the most violent offenders under this Trudeau government. It makes absolutely no sense. But I think, again, regardless where you stand on the Ukraine issue, we need an audit, I would say, to see if this money is going into creating a whole new bureaucracy, the Department of Ukrainian Canadian Affairs, as opposed to, actually sending equipment. Oh, and by the way, equipment that works, not those. Wasn't there a story, Tamara, that we sent some tanks over there and the treads had rusted out or something like that? It's like...
Well, we're too focused here in Canada on our military becoming woke and being all inclusive and gender diverse. So there's no time to check up on how our actual equipment is faring, which is weathering away as we worry more about being inclusive and tolerant. And I think even just today or yesterday, there was an article out about the military having to take some training to acknowledge and denounce its white fragility. So not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we sent some rusty tanks their way. But we have the next video is on some new universal health coverage coming down from the World Health Organization. So we have Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus basically saying that they're going to lobby elected politicians and influence the way that they tax their people. Here, let's listen from him directly.
IPU President Duarte Pacheco, IPU Secretary General, my brother Martin Chungong, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. As members of Parliament, you're uniquely positioned to transform political commitments to UHC into reality. It therefore gives me great pleasure to launch the new UHC Handbook, a joint project of the IPU and WHO, which can help to guide you along the path towards universal health coverage in accordance with the landmark 2019 IPU resolution. The handbook and the accompanying briefs provide guidance on leveraging your roles in lawmaking, finance, taxation, and accountability to advance UHC. I encourage you to draw on the expertise of WHO and IPU and to engage at the high-level meeting on UHC at the UN General Assembly this September. To provide the support you need on the journey towards UHC, it's critical that WHO has the sustainable financing we need to do long-term programming in countries, deliver top-quality norms and standards, and respond to emergencies. Last year, your governments agreed to a stepwise increase of assessed contributions to WHO. I urge you to support the first phase of this increase when it comes before the World Health Assembly this May. Thank you all once again for your commitment to UHC and a healthier, safer, fairer future for your countries. I thank you.
Tamara, why do I get this feeling in my gut that Tedros is like that guy that phoned me last week, some scammer telemarketer saying a Nigerian prince has just put $4.2 million in his will to me, and I just have to send a $600 finder's fee to get the scam going on. I mean, here's the thing. Who elected Dr. Tedros? And by the way, can we just drop the doctor part? Because he's not really a medical doctor, is he, Tamara?
No, I think he's if my memory serves me correctly, he's a veterinarian, I believe. And there are so many things to unpack here, like not to mention all of the complete ineptitudes of the World Health Organization. The whole pandemic response failures, the indiscriminate mandates, masking, the pushing of a novel injection on the global population. And the fact that they are, again, and this all kind of ties into the Chinese Communist Party, they're largely financed by private sector, lobby groups like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Gavi, which is just a subset essentially of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but also the Chinese Communist Party. The World Health Organization is a very China-centric organization, and they have been responsible for covering up the role that China played in this global pandemic and the way that they responded. And they really promoted China's complete suppression tactics, from lockdowns to mask mandates and complete societal and economic squashing, really, on a global scale that devastated and decimated our society, our children's mental and physical well-being, our economic capabilities and stability. And now they're pushing through this universal health coverage under this idea of health for all, which is basically a collectivist idea on health, providing health for everyone. And it completely ignores health at the local level. And so understanding what each individual community or each individual person needs, there's no longer individualized care. It's this collective idea of global health, health for all. And they have all these strange slogans. For instance, when we were there at the World Health Summit in Berlin, Germany in October of last year, there was politics for health. A big theme of their whole discussion was politics for health. And I have previously interviewed James Roguski. He has a pretty robust Substack, but you can also find the article under our campaign. I think it's through Expose the WHO, the WHO.com. So at that website, you can see all of our reports on the World Health Organization and its corruption. But James Roguski is really sounding the alarms on some of these accords and pandemic treaty stuff that the World Health Organization, under the direction of Tedros, is pushing through. There's a new pandemic treaty accord. They're trying to change existing international health regulations. And now they're pushing through this new universal health coverage. The other really interesting thing here is that when they meet at these World Health summits and the World Health Accord, I think is what he called it, that's happening in May. I think that's in Washington, D.C. They send unelected bureaucrats primarily. From what I can tell thus far, what's happened over the last few years is that we will send, a bunch of bureaucrats from Health Canada and maybe our health minister, Yves Duclos. But for the most part, we're sending over representatives that were never elected democratically. We want to talk about upholding, our democracy. And they are involved in these discussions and these roundtables, and a lot of them are backdoor discussions, and making these decisions on behalf of a supposed democratic nation. So the whole thing just reeks of undemocratic, and there is a lot of corruption. The way that the World Health Organization has conducted itself is increasingly concerning, and many people are calling for us to just disregard the World Health Organization and not sign on to any of their pandemic preparedness things any longer, and really defund them.
But Tamara, in tangible terms, how would this even work? This whole idea of health for all. I think he's talking about the world, right? 8 billion people, a few billion living in abject poverty and no doubt need health care, and 'twas ever thus. But I mean, how do you, I mean, they talk about, they want, where is it? They're looking at lawmaking powers, finance, taxation, basically all the roles of an actual elected government. But, like I said, how does the money in, money out process work here? Because to me, this just seems like a big word salad that, is all about virtue signaling, and we're here to help you. And yet 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, does anything come out of this?
Well, and it would be less concerning if it was actually word salad, but we have seen our government officials, and primarily our health officials, and I use the term official because that's how they refer to themselves. But, Health Canada, for instance, just followed almost verbatim the directive of the World Health Organization throughout the pandemic. Well, here's the World Health Organization's guidance document, and here's their guidance on this, and here what we're doing this based off the World Health Organization's recommendations. And so it is just a muck of a word salad. However, our organizations and our bloated bureaucracy, who are primarily unelected, as we see in the case of Health Canada, they have been following this directive. And so that is increasingly concerning as verbiage in these legally binding agreements. For instance, the international health regulations are a legally binding set of regulations. And if there's key language in there that gets changed, it changes the fundamentals of the entire regulation. So unfortunately, you are up against this really powerful, well-financed lobbying group. And they also have ties in with, McKinsey Consulting that our colleague Alexa Lavoie has reported on extensively. The spider web of connections involved in the pandemic response and moving forward with these pandemic preparedness treaties are very concerning. And as you hear this word salad nonsense coming from their mouths, it does have repercussions for us in Canada, as we've seen over the last 2 years. So, I mean, take it for what it is. But at the end of the day, we followed, for the most part, exactly what the World Health Organization told us to do. And it came at great expense to our country, our society, our economy. I mean, look at us. The inflation's through the roof. People can't pay their bills. And I guess this might be a good segue to lead into, some of the climate action stuff, because I think that is what the World Health Organization will be lobbying for next is, this sustainability initiatives. We see the writing on the wall there.
Yes, climate insanity. Although there was some sanity a couple of days ago. Greta Thunberg, I understand, Tamara, deleted her 2018 tweet, which said that the world was going to end in 2023. Just checking the calendar. She deleted the tweet because the world didn't end. Here we are gabbing on.
Yeah.
So
I said this the other day. I'm old enough to remember peak oil. Remember when peak oil was going to be a thing and we're running out of oil and we have to hurry and switch over to something else because peak oil is looming over our heads. And then it's like, well, peak oil was supposed to happen and we're still here. And actually the reserves look like they're refilling. So what's happening? Oh yeah, there it is. Oh,
Isn't
look,
that
she's
funny?
so concerned.
That's a great headline, eh? Greta Thunberg deletes 2018 tweet saying world will end in 2023 after world does not end. What I don't get, though, Tamara, is that technically she's not yet proven wrong because she has until December 31st of this year for the world to end. So do you think she jumped the gun?
Don't give her any ideas. Don't give the financiers any ideas, David.
But the sad thing is, Tamara, as you know, this poor girl is being, dragged out to major conferences, whether it's the World Economic Forum, the United Nations. I bet she had something to say at the World Health Organization because, of course, climate change, according to that circle, affects our health. And it's just so staggering because she's an expert in nothing. I don't even know if she finished high school. And this is enough for a couple of years ago, Time Magazine to award her Person of the Year. I kind of feel sorry for her. I see her as a puppet. I see deep-pocketed people as being the puppet masters behind her. And I guess they figure if she's a convenient spokeswoman for selling climate change because, Tamara, you criticize this gal and you're going to be looked upon as some barbarian bullying her. And by the way, is she, 20, 21? I mean, I know she looks like she's 13. Maybe it's that vegan diet she's on. But she's not a minor anymore, I can tell you that much.
Yeah, look at her just staging her own arrest here.
Yep.
And that's the second time in the last, couple weeks anyway, that she's staged an arrest. And as we saw when Ezra caught up with them in Davos I guess it was about a month or two ago, she can't attest to anything that's unscripted. As soon as she's off script, well, sorry, I'm just going to laugh as though I am an actual child, even though she is now an adult, and brush it off because it doesn't go with my one narrow-minded narrative.
And I thought that was Ezra's one of his finest moments ever. That Q&A on this long walk in Davos. And, the thing is, too, I mean, you see some of the comments from the haters. Oh, how dare you bully this little girl? First of all, she's a woman, not a girl. Secondly, look at her attitude. She's enjoying it. She can barely contain her giggles and her smiles. And, she didn't offer any tangible answers. But in no way was she being harassed. In fact, at the end of the trek, where her and her handler said, well, we'd like to go now, everyone stopped and let them go. So, I thought it was a fantastic interview on the fly. But you have some other climate insanity you wanted to get to, I take it, Tamara.
Well, not quite. I mean, it is insanity, but it's not quite the climate insanity anymore. We have an article here from CTV which says that according to this new study, so take it for what it is, a lack of sleep reduces vaccine effectiveness. And so the opening line they tried, and it's primarily for men too, so especially in men. So they say if you're scheduling an appointment for a vaccination, whether for COVID-19, the flu, or travel to another country, make sure you're getting a long, restful night's slumber before you head to the doctor. And the funny thing is here at the very bottom, of course, buried toward the bottom of the article, they say that there's actually, there was no study done for the mRNA injections. This was based on a meta-analysis of where was it? I sent flu and I think it's influenza A and influenza B studies. I can't find the exact sentence, but they did say that how we stimulate the immune system is the same whether we're using an mRNA vaccine for COVID-19 or an influenza, hepatitis, typhoid, or an immunological vaccine. It's a prototypical antibody or vaccine response, and that's why we believe we can generalize to COVID. So you know how everyone who was like, COVID's just a flu and COVID's a bad flu season and it's a seasonal respiratory virus, and you were called like a bigot science denier for doing that. Well, here they are themselves making a generalization that the novel COVID-19 mRNA vaccine injection will react the same or act the same way as an influenza or any other of these more typical vaccine gateways. And so this is a complete denial of the actual mRNA platform itself, which does not work like a conventional or typical traditional vaccine. This is a whole new mechanism that has never been rolled out on a massive population level before. So, I mean, if you want to trust the science, these people don't even realize how an mRNA injection is vastly different than, per se, a flu shot. But another funny thing that I found in this article is that they kind of they conflate sex and gender. So you know how the whole like gender ideology, trans rights folks, far left radicals are gender is different than sex. Well, here they say there are known sex differences in immune response to foreign antigens. Okay, sure. And then they go down and they say, regardless of your gender. So according to science, which this article is supposed to be about, right, a scientific study or meta-analysis, are they conflating sex and gender? Are they the same? Are they different? If there are key sex differences in immune responses between men and women, well, can't that argument move forward, when we are talking about trans infiltration into women's sacred spaces? I mean, there's so much to unpack in this article. I'm going off on, as you call it, a tangerine or a tangent. But like, are we trusting the science? Are we not trusting the science? Do the scientists not know that the mRNA platform is completely different than a regular flu vaccine? There's just so much wrong here. And they, of course, allude to with this clickbaity headline that this pertains specifically to COVID-19 vaccines, which it never even looked at. So,
well,
junk science, hogwash article.
Tamara, I think the jump the shark moment in terms of trusting the science vis-a-vis COVID-19 came actually quite early in the pandemic. I'm thinking specifically of the summer of 2020 when you had top doctors. And in fact, I think there was even a Harvard researcher that said it is justified for people to congregate and have their masks off if they are taking part in Black Lives Matter demonstrations. You see, because the virus, I guess, the unspoken thing here, Tamara, it's very socially aware, you see. If it knows that's a Black Lives Matter demonstration as opposed to, say, a freedom rally, it's not going to affect you. It's got that kind of cognitive awareness, even though it's just a microscopic virus. Unbelievable. But when I read that, when I saw that kind of wokeism being put out there, that was it for me. That was Fonzie on the water skis going over the tiger shark in that 1977 Happy Days episode. You know, the thing being, no matter what follows after, it's never as good, right? It's the jump the shark moment. But that is just amazing that they're getting involved with gender politics in terms of a virus. Unbelievable. Well, and I know we have to be careful how we talk about COVID-19 and vaccines, but I guess if we're taking our talking points from the mainstream media, brought to you by Pfizer, then I guess it's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not, I think they don't even realize that they're doing these gender talking points. But I immediately, when they said there are known sex differences in immune responses to foreign antigens like viruses, and it goes on. And then it goes regardless of your gender. So I'm like, wait, are we talking about sex? Are we talking about gender? I thought they were different things here. Yeah. It's so confusing and difficult to keep up. And I think that actually can lead us into some trans sports leagues being funded by your taxpayer dollars, hard at work, in the region of Waterloo, which I believe is where Busty is close to that area. But anyway, the federal Liberals give funds for a new non-binary sports league. So yay, look at Justin Trudeau there, just all the virtues. On Monday, they invested in an exclusive LGBTQ plus sports league in Ontario. The funding for the Spectrum League in Kitchener is part of a government program that tests innovation in sport with the goal of spreading successful innovations worldwide. This article comes from True North. They say the government invested $90,000. Yes, because we don't have record inflation. Canadians aren't struggling to buy groceries or heat their homes. So why not just throw almost $100,000 into 2S LGBTQI plus sports?
Don't forget the plus symbol.
I thought the plus was all encompassing. Like, why do we have to keep? At first, it was the queer, or no, it was anyway. In Waterloo Region Project, which hosts a multi-sport league for non-binary players. And so anyway, there's more to the article, but then they said the investment comes as a survey of Canadian female athletes found the majority, 91.7%, think that women should have the right to a dedicated female league. You don't say. And 88% believe trans women have a competitive advantage over women. Thank you. This might be one instance where the government listens to the majority and actually pretends to care about democracy. But wow, $100,000 to this sports league. And how are they, how do you even play against each other? Are there enough of them to start getting actual teams formed here?
Well, I always have a concern about my taxpayer dollars being spent on ludicrous things. But, my answer might surprise you here, Tamara. I think maybe we are, in a sense, ahead of the curve. I think when it comes to the growing problem of biological men competing against biological females, because 'twas ever thus, there's always been male and female divisions except for equestrian and auto racing. It is a huge problem. It's completely unfair for inherent biological advantages that males have. So what I'm saying, Tamara, I would like to see whether it's any kind of sport from, baseball to rugby to hockey, whether it's the Olympic Games, you name it. We have the male division, the female division, and the other division. So whatever you identify, if you're, and by the way, you notice there's never a problem, is there, with a female athlete going male and getting into a male league? I wouldn't have a problem with that, because that must mean she is one hell of a super athlete if, as a biological female, she can compete with males. No, the problem is the other way around. And for all you people out there mindlessly chanting, trans women are real women, trans women are real women, you might think you're being diverse and inclusive, but what you really are a bunch of misogynists, plain and simple, because you are going to war on females. And sports is bad enough, but let's not forget, Tamara, the prison system. Bubba can identify as Barbara, even though he's 350 pounds and has a beard. And instant presto, he's into a female penitentiary. Again, male penitentiary, female penitentiary, other penitentiary. So and by the way, what do you want to bet? As soon as we have that other penitentiary established, all these dudes that are gaming the system, because that's what's really going on here, not any kind of, transitioning. What do you want to bet suddenly all that nonsense dries up, like a drop of oil in the Sahara? So if this is what this is all about, that in the near future, we're going to have an other division so we can leave women's sports alone, I support that.
Yeah, no, I do agree in that regard. I'm just, obviously have an issue with the amount of the taxpayer dollars going toward this sort of situation, and curious to see how the uptake rate will be. Are they going to have enough players to formulate teams and play against one another? Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I could care less, Tamara. I honestly mean that. And by the way, if we can go back to that, the original news article, guys, because I want to put a question out there. Let's see, the photograph. There you go. All right. There's the rainbow flag, okay? And it's LGBTQ, right, Tamara? The T stands for transgender. Oh, no, but that's not good enough for the trans community. They have to have their own special flag, the baby blue, pink, and white transgender flag. It curries into this whole, philosophy we're seeing right now, Tamara. If it's trans, it's good, and if it's good, it's trans. I mean, they're so super special, the transgender community. You don't expect them to share a flag with the lesbians, the gays, and the bisexuals, do you? No. They have to have their own extra special flag as well. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I think that they're running out of colors. Because then sometimes you'll see the one with the Black Lives Matter too in there, and it's like an all-encompassing flag. But then I don't know who will feel left out at some point eventually down the line. All right,
it's the Black Indigenous People of Color Vagina modification of the. I think that's what they call it. There it is. There. So if I was a gay man, I'd say right now, holy smokes, you already got your own flag. Now you want to desecrate our flag with the Black Indigenous People of Color vagina being slapped on it. That's going too far. I bet you that flag is going to get further modified, Tamara, as, when the pansexual community says, hey, can't we have an illustration of a frying pan on that flag or something? Don't we count? It is another example of what I call transanity.
Well, many people are saying that actually it's the what's being called the MAPS community, these minor attracted persons, i.e. pedophiles, are the next to try to latch on to this movement as it becomes increasingly radicalized and under the guise of being progressive and, again, inclusive. So they're these minor attracted people, pedophiles, want to be included too. And so many argue that as this slippery slope continues and descends into complete insanity under the guise of tolerance and inclusivity, that's kind of the next step in this process, which I would say, maybe we're not far off. But I do have an interview scheduled.
Tamara, before you go on, because I think you made a very, very important point there. If we look at the civil rights movement, you see, it was women's rights, right? Women fighting for equality, getting the same paycheck as a male would, and who other than a male chauvinist pig would be against that? And then, the civil rights was about minorities getting equal rights too. Then it was gay and lesbian rights. And then as all these battles have been fought and won, that community, the agitators out there that need to demonstrate about something, well, currently it's trans rights. You could argue they've won that. When you have biological males competing in female sports and staying in female prisons, I think you've now won that fight. So what's the next mountain to climb? I think you're right. I think it's pedophiles. And I already see the language changing. Pedophiles in some circles, Tamara, that's considered impolite. It's intergenerational love. That's the proper term right now to describe, say, a mature man having relations with a young girl or boy. It's sickening, I know, folks, but it's already, the message is already, the narrative is already changing. So maybe that is going to be the next fight. Who are we to judge, if a mature man and an adolescent girl are involved in a consensual relationship? Who are we to judge that that is wrong? So I'm afraid to say I think you're on the right path in this being the next so-called civil rights battle to be fought.
Well, and they say love is love, right? And age is nothing but a number. And so as you see, that language change from pedophile, disgusting person that should be condemned and ridiculed and jailed, you see it change to, it's a minor attracted person. We're part of the MAPS community.
Wow.
So that flowery language can show you kind of the direction that this community may start to take. So something to be aware of. But I do have an interview scheduled in just a few short minutes here. So
then the world revolves around Tamara Ugolini. I mean, who are we to get in the way of Tamara's interview? I'm only kidding. Yeah, we're already past the sign-off time. So go ahead, Tamara, if you've got some chats there.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on some super chats. And sorry, the world does not revolve around me. However, I like to be cognizant of my scheduled interview times, and I should leave more time to go over on the live stream, because I think often, there's just so much to cover. We have, feedback and opinions on so many things, and maybe an hour just isn't sufficient anymore. Maybe the viewers should tell us, do you want to see the live stream go on longer than an hour? Okay, so we have a live stream super chat from yesterday, I believe, because we had the glitch there. So this came from Larmew. It was $20. Thank you very much. Real news from real people. We don't tune in for perfection. Well, thank you very much, because we are far from perfect.
Thank you, I think.
I think, yeah, right? Fraser McBurney, there he is with his caps lock. Thanks, Fraser. He gives $5. So they will be protesting, I guess, tomorrow, Wednesday, March 15th. We protest the anniversary of 2 weeks to flatten the curve in front of Hamilton City Hall from 1 to 3 p.m. If you want to join us, come on down. Yeah, it's crazy to think. March 17th, I have a child born March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. And I remember it very clearly. That's the day that Doug Ford instituted the state of emergency in Ontario, and then he effectively shuttered all the playgrounds. And we do experience gifts with our kids. So, well, in the before times anyway, we would do, we'd go to a hotel for the night instead of, plan this party with all this junk gifts and everything. We would just go and do experience instead of gifts. And so we had this whole weekend planned to celebrate the birthday coming up. And all of that came to a screeching halt. And I just remember after Doug Ford did his press release announcing the state of emergency and they closed all the playgrounds, I was like, okay, guys, we're gearing up quickly. We're going to get all of our outerwear on. We're going to play at the park for one last hurrah, because who knows how long this madness will last. And gosh, I'm so glad that we did, because what ensued was beyond my wildest dreams. So anyway.
Mine as well. And by the way, I'd like to say to Fraser, first of all, thanks for the donation. Secondly, Hamilton is a very challenging place to cover a protest. Last time I covered one there. What happens, Tamara, is that Hamilton bylaw go out with their telephoto lens cameras. They take a picture of you, and in my case, I didn't have a dog in the hunt. I wasn't a protester or a demonstrator. I was a reporter covering the protest, and I am emailed I think it was a $380 AMPS ticket. That's a ticket that you cannot challenge, folks. And by the way, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld this, I think, unconstitutional an unlawful ticket, because let's face it, even if you get a speeding ticket, you can have your day in court. But no, you have to pay it. All you can do is plead mercy on to the organization that gave you the ticket and hope they reduce it a little. So that's how Hamilton bylaw rolls. They bring out their telephoto lens cameras, take pictures of people they don't like, and email them tickets that cannot be challenged. Unbelievable.
So much for innocent until proven guilty, and how stunning and brave too, right? To just snap the photos and send it later. No sort of progressive policy on policing in that regard. Is that education first is what they try to say. Yeah, sounds like it. And with that, we have concluded our chat. Thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry that I have to cut our overtime short.
I'm sure it's super important. I always love your stories, Tamara, and I'm sure our viewers do too. So good luck on your interview. Thank you so much for filling in for Sheila Gunn-Reid today. And thank you to Olivia and Ephraim behind the boards. And thank you to all who tuned in, and especially those who gave a super chat. It's how we keep the lights on here. I'll be back tomorrow. I think it's with Sheila. In the meantime, as always, stay safe and stay sane.
Be honest, our world is going through a period of real instability and uncertainty right now. Just last week, I welcomed President von der Leyen of the European Union right here to Canada. We talked about the ways that Canada will continue to stand with Ukraine in the face of Russia's brutal invasion. We also talked about how, as our European allies look to the future, it has become clearer than ever that we must go further, faster, on reliable and sustainable energy. The unreliability of certain large partners around the world, whether it be Russia or elsewhere, authoritarian